Hey guys, welcome to the channel. This is the 5-minute watch review. My name is Strider, or you can call me Little Jim. Most videos are going to be 5 minutes long, but extra special watches get the spotlight. And that could be as long as 20 minutes. So strap in, we're going for a ride.
It's got wandering hours. Is this witchcraft power? Satellite complication starts new conversation. Where did you find that? How much did you pay? Can I even afford it? Or maybe lay away watching time on a carousel. What a complication. Take me to space, can't launch me away. I don't wanna be here anyway. Life on Earth is so mundane, but out in the cosmos I can't even complain. I'm a starboard, ready to fly. Give me the chance and I'll fly high. Nubeo, Nubeo, I said, oh, you will know. I need that futuristic feeling in my life. Those bold colors, bold sizes, big energy on the horizon. From the ocean to the sun, my adventure's just begun. Maybe the space station alone. I sleep all day and wake to the moon, drifting over your heads at 17,000 miles an hour. It's going through my head, that feeling of power.
Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Jim, and this is going to be a spotlight presentation on the Nubeo Skylab. Spotlight meaning, as you saw in the intro, that it's going to get more than the standard 5-minute review treatment. We're going to go as in-depth as I possibly can during our time together, and we're going to get to know this watch inside and out. So, let's go ahead and open this up. While I'm doing so, let's get a little lesson on who Nubeo is. Now, if you watched one of my recent videos, I had the wonderful opportunity to get my hands on a Spinnaker Fleece GMT, and I have fallen madly in love with it, and I have very rarely taken it off since the day that it arrived. And Nubeo is part of the same parent company. The parent company being Solar Time, which is the Dartmouth Group. The Dartmouth Group owns Nubeo, Spinnaker, Aviate, and a whole slew of other brands. I am going to be sharing with you as many of those as I can because I have found interesting models in pretty much every brand. As a matter of fact, the next review I bring out to you is going to be from RGMT, or Regiment, which is their kind of military-inspired offerings. But Nubeo is something wildly different. Nubeo is very modern, futuristic type of designs that are either going to be related to space or space exploration or exploration of the oceans. So they have some divers watches and they have some space-themed watches. And this, as you could tell from the cover art on the cover box, is going to be about space exploration. This is the Skylab in orbit right here on the outside of the packaging. I think that's pretty darn cool because that's my generation. I just turned 50 years old. I was born in 74, and Skylab was launched in May of 1973. So this was something that I had learned about when I was a child, a young child in school. Let's get into the watch. As we open this up, we are greeted with the watch, as well as a nice felt lid that says Nubeo Limited Edition. And I have double checked with the manufacturer. The correct pronunciation of the brand name is Nubeo. So I've heard it pronounced a couple of different ways, and I'm one of those people that I can look at a word and I don't know if I'm reading it the way it's intended to be spoken. So I always try to double check because who wants to make that kind of mistake? Now, I'm going to show you the watch in a second. If you don't know what the watch is all about and the photography left you somehow still in the dark, I'll discuss with you why this watch is so special. When we get underneath that tray, You see we have a limited edition numbered card. Each watch is numbered out of only 100 per variant that are made. And that'll go into another story. There was actually a different color execution that I very much wanted, which was the dark red and black. I thought that was super handsome, and there were none of those. Well, so what are you going to do? You're going to find a backup, because it was the watch that I wanted more than the color. And you get a full instruction manual here, which you're probably going to want to thumb through. And you have your international warranty card here. And that is it. We could put all this back. Also up in the top here, good luck getting it out. You have a spring bar tool so you can make your strap changes a little bit easier, because this watch, unlike the Spinnakers, does not have quick release pins on either of the straps. Now, what sets this watch apart from everything else you are likely to ever own is going to be the way that it displays time. I'm going to go ahead and set it down here. Make sure it's got a good wind. What you're looking at here, this mechanism running central to the dial, is called a satellite complication. And overall, the complication is usually referred to as a wandering hour, because your hour is told by one of these three arms, and it wanders around the dial. It's also going to use that as a pointer to the minute scale down here from 0 to 60. The idea of the wandering hour or satellite complication was perfected by Urwerk, and I remember seeing an early model. I believe it would have been the U103 back then, when I was at the Geneva Watch Fair in Switzerland. My jaw dropped and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. At that moment, I stopped and went, I have to own one of those watches. I don't care what I do, I have to own one of those Urwerk watches. Now, while a few brands have managed to mimic the operation and the feel of this complication for less than the Lamborghini level price tag that Urwerk charges, a lot of them really haven't done it all too well. And still, in many cases, you were at least tens of thousands of dollars. They can get really, really expensive. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that you could buy a Lamborghini for the price of one of the original Urwerks. Actually, even some of the modern Urwerks. Yeah, you're talking $150,000, $200,000, $225,000. Just incredible work. Remember, until they had done this, nobody else had. Because you're looking at this Nubeo and going, okay, well, here is an accessible watch for many people, price-wise. So if they can do it, why did Urwerk charge so much? Because they were the innovators. They were the pioneers of this, I guess we can call it technology. That's totally fine. So let's take a quick look and see how exactly this operates. So as I pull the crown and I operate the movement manually, this is what the watch will do on its own as it's telling time. Right now, it's saying that it's 11:45, 11:50, and when you get to right about the 50-minute mark, your next hour hand or hour indication is coming up. It's already flipped. Forget this for 1 second. Look up here at the 10. When the 10 reaches right over here at about the 3 o'clock position, that 10 is going to flip over to 1. Now the time reads 1 o'clock. 12 has reached the end of the grade of the scale. So now it begins over here. 1, 105, 110, 115, 120, 130. And we see right over here, 11 is coming back around. 11 is going to switch over to 2. And then everything begins all over again. And it can do it, I mean, as quickly as you want to do it. I wouldn't go racing around just because it's still a mechanical movement. You don't want to go destroying stuff just to be funny. Another thing that I think is really super interesting is what happens when the lights go out, because everything that you need to tell the time is going to be loomed, just like it would be on a regular watch. But you would think with these blocks that are rolling and the hours that are wandering, that it would be more challenging to make them luminescent. And I'm sure to a degree it was more challenging. What I have found particularly interesting is if you blast this dial with light, you would think that only the upward facing blocks would be loomed, but yet as they flip, a block that was once on the very bottom and completely covered when blasted with light still finds a way to glow. Now, the way they laid out the Skylab here, the closest that I can find in Urwerk is the UR220. If I had to make a direct one-to-one comparison, because it has the same type of carousel for the satellite. The original, the 103s, most of the watch was completely covered in, I think it was titanium if I'm not mistaken, and they just had a small opening here, a small sapphire window here, and you saw the hours and minutes coming across here. But to see the entire carousel like this, the closest one that I can find is the UR220. There may be others. I'm not saying that's definitively the only one, but it's the closest. And at around $150,000 in current value, most of us are probably never going to own one, and likely never will see one in real life on anyone else's wrist. Yet for $2,000, and often discounted between $1,000 and $1,300, you can buy a Skylab and have the same type of amazing horological carousel on display on your wrist. Here's the catch, though. I'm going to go ahead and take off my fleas here. Put it off to the side. This is going to make it or break it for a lot of you watching. There was a time, especially in my life, where we all enjoyed really, really large watches. That time has passed. I myself have worn up to 55, 57 millimeter watches and enjoyed them for what they were at that time, you know, the early 2000s. But I have shifted completely to 42 to 44 millimeter being my comfort zone. I won't go below 42 millimeters because it looks like I've robbed a small child of their watch, but I won't go over 44 generally because it's really overpowering. This, my friends, is 48 millimeters. So like I said, there was a time not too long ago, you know, about 20 years ago, that I would have worn this and never thought a thing about the size. But it's big. I have an 8-inch wrist, and as you can see, it's not, it's not a fat wrist. There's the bone right there. I just have a large adult-sized arm. So I can carry off the 48 millimeters and feel that it looks okay. There are some people that will look at that lug tip to lug tip length there and go, yeah, there's no way. Like if you've got a 6.5-inch wrist, you should not be even considering this watch. It's going to look clownish on you. Between the fact that it's so large and it's so thick, it's going to look silly. Here's the thing though. Sure, it's larger and it's more vibrant, but remember also that Urwerk isn't subtle either. And they also use vivid colors on many of their watches as well. So yeah, this is a bit crazy with the deep kind of iridescent color tones that are going on in the bezel, the purple in the crown, the purple in the keepers, or the full-on purple strap that you can switch to. Yeah, it's got a personality, but I like this personality. It's pretty darn cool. But it's big. It's going to get attention, and if you're the kind of person that doesn't like a lot of attention, drawn to you out in public, then this is probably not going to be your favorite watch. I will say this, it's actually pretty lightweight. It's not crazy heavy. And it has a nice feel to the case, especially the way that the strap is integrated. You don't have long extended lugs. They're basically being tucked up into the case. So it begins dropping the strap down immediately. So yeah, you could have a 7 1/4, 7.5 inch wrist and pull it off just fine. Remember, I'm not here to sell you anything. I have been down that road for many years, a long time ago, and a lot of you know that. I don't care if you buy one of these or not. So I'm not going to tell you, yeah, you could even have a 6.5 inch wrist to be fine. No, there is a cutoff for a watch this size. And you have to be practical about it. No matter how much I laugh at all these micro brands that continue to push 38, 39, 40 millimeter watches as men's watches, I'm still not going to say that a 48 millimeter watch is something that's normalized in the mainstream, because it's not. That was a thing that went on a long time ago. But like I said, for me, it works, so I love it. Now, it's not going to be a daily wear watch like the Fleas is, but Spinnaker is more of a classic, practical brand anyway, whereas Nubeo really isn't. They're all about crazy design, but well done design. And I don't want you to take that as, oh, they're just ridiculous and too over the top. I don't think they are. They've done a really great job of integrating the theme of the Skylab into this design. Take a look here at the background of the dial. So you have this ISO grid pattern, which this is funny because this is the second time I've discussed what ISO grid is in the past couple of months. I just reviewed a knife recently made by a company that used an ISO grid pattern in their titanium frame. So as we look at that ISO grid pattern, what ISO grid was developed for by NASA was to create something as lightweight, airweight as possible and still have incredible structural rigidity, be as strong as it possibly can be because of the shapes that are used in skeletonizing those areas. Now, that represents the floor sections. If you were to look, I'll see if I can find some images to drop in here. I hope that I can. Future me, editor me, look for those. There are sections in the space station, and the flooring looks exactly like the background of the dial. They really did a good job of integrating something that isn't immediately obvious. You know, they didn't take like the solar umbrella or something and create something out of that, something that's, you know, on the outside of the space station that everybody sees at all times. They've done that with a couple of elements, but I like some of the subtle elements as well. Let's talk about the specs on this very quickly, and then once we're done with that, we'll swap out the strap, and we'll see how it looks with a super in-your-face look of all purple. So you're looking at an automatic Miyota 9039 movement, which is of course made in Japan. Your case diameter is a true full 48 millimeters, and it wears like a 48 millimeter. Case thickness is 17 millimeters from the case back to the highly domed crystal, which is made of sapphire. And you have a screw-down crown, which I think is going to surprise a lot of people. You might look at this and go, this is really about the artistry of the mechanism that's telling the time. Who's going to go, you know, jumping in the pool with this? Well, maybe you won't, but if you do, you have the extra security of having 100 meters of water resistance with that screw-down crown. Your two straps that are included will be rubber, and it's claimed to fit, it's claimed the strap length is 8 inches, but it will fit over an 8-inch wrist, because if your strap is 8 inches, you have to factor in also the roughly 2 or so inches of the length of the watch. So yeah, you can definitely go well above 8-inch wrist. And those are your specs. Now, for those that really aren't into the space stuff, I'm going to change out the strap and we'll talk about Skylab just for a minute or two, and then we'll get right back to the watch. Oh, yeah, that is not subtle in any way, is it? Wow, that is really, whoo, that is purple. But, just in case you think I'm making it up, I personally love purple. I am a purple fan. I'm not just saying that because I'm sitting out here with this watch. I love purple. Now let's see how the purple plays on the wrist. I'm going to be honest with you. I think I am pretty much going to wear this exclusively with the black, with just the touch of purple in the keepers. Let's see how crazy this is. Oh yeah, that's that is insane. Yeah, you're going to be seen from a mile away wearing this thing. That's crazy. That's just absolutely nuts. But I dig it. Oh yeah, I dig it. So basically what Skylab was America's first experimental space station. It was launched in May of 1973, and it was conceived to prove humans could live and work in space for long periods of time. And they pushed that to the limit of an unprecedented 171 days. The manned crew was up there for 171 days. They had only initially planned to get astronauts out there for 30 days. They thought that was going to be a major, major accomplishment, was to get humans to live and work in that environment for 30 days. Instead, they were able to push it out to 171, and it's not because the astronauts were stranded like they are currently on the news right now, or so we hear from legacy media. So it was a really cool time for discovery for America, for the whole world, but also for America in particular. Their other mission was to basically see further into the solar system than we'd ever seen before. Their instruments could read out further than they had before, and they could be there in real time to make adjustments, make repairs, and take the readings and do an initial analysis of those readings in real time in space while they were there. That's pretty darn cool. They also learned how to adapt our human physiology to life in weightlessness for long periods of time, learning what types of exercises needed to be done, which ones didn't do anything because without the resistance of gravity, it didn't do any good, all that sort of stuff. Pretty darn interesting. Because did you know that the heart can atrophy like your muscles? Yeah, so that's crazy. So yeah, they've got to do things to keep their heart rate up and keep that pumping and keep that muscle going. It's just the crazy, crazy stuff. They did a lot of science experiments up there as well. So again, why it was called Skylab was because they had full-on laboratories up there where they were able to do science experiments and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a major, major deal. So to see a watch brand come out and commemorate that 50 years after the missions have ended is pretty darn cool. And it reminds us of our history. If that's something, that you're not into that much, but you're into watches, and you've come across this watch and you see it and you fall in love with it and you wait for the right time to find the right discount and buy it, then you're going to get it. And you may have a new fascination for what Skylab stood for. And you might do a little bit of digging, a little bit of research, maybe watch a documentary or two, and get an appreciation for what space exploration was back in the 70s and 80s. This is an outside view of Skylab here. So you've got kind of the inside view when you look through the dial side. And then back here on the exhibition case back, you get to see an outer portion of this. I keep wanting to call it a satellite of the space station. So what do you think? If you were looking at this and you had an interest because you've always wanted a satellite complication, a wandering hour, and you're wondering, oh man, everything says 48 millimeters. Is it really 48 millimeters? How's it going to wear on the wrist? Can I handle that? What do you think now that you've seen it? You've seen it on the wrist. You've seen kind of a casual lifestyle shot of it as well on the wrist. How do you think you would fare with it? And can you justify $2,000 for it? I'm going to tell you right now, this is a really nice, very well made watch. It's hard to give it a direct comparison. If this were like my Fleas, if this was a standard forehand GMT that I could put up right up against other watches with, you know, the same sapphire crystal, the same amount of luminescence, the same movement inside, the same bracelet and straps, all these materials and all these features being identical. It's easier to say, yes, this is worth X amount of dollars, or no, it's not worth X amount of dollars, because I feel I'm getting a better value in, you know, brand X, for example. This one's more difficult because there are only a handful of watch brands that have attempted the satellite complication and done it for a fairly reasonable amount of money. This, I look at it and go, $2,000, a lot of money for the watch, but the quality, the craftsmanship that's apparent when you pick it up is really, really nice. I can definitely say for that $1,000 to $1,300, if you're not comparing it to other standard watches, you're looking for a standout, something wild, something different, something that's horologically complicated, which this most certainly is. It's not just a, you know, a three-hand day date or a standard GMT or something like that. This is something much more complex. Then I'd say, yeah, you're going to enjoy it for the money that you spent. You won't get it and be disappointed. If you don't know if you can handle that big size, or if it reminds you of watches that you haven't worn in 20 years, or maybe it reminds you of a certain watch brand that you don't like anymore, then you may not really enjoy this because you're going to get that flavor. I still remember as Corum was trying to find their way around 2010, 2011, you know, they had really exploded on the scene with the bubble. Everybody wanted a bubble, and everybody wanted a trapeze. I owned a trapeze, and I loved it. The one bubble that I really, really, really wanted, I never could find the exact one that I wanted. And then the Admiral's Cup came out, and that thing was incredible. But it only worked at that time because the Admiral's Cup was enormous. It was bigger than this. Actually, it was pretty, actually not too dissimilar because of the faceting and everything that you see here, the geometric shapes. But you know, it was about the same size and a larger version as well. It had a small window in which it could sell. By the time 2011, 2012 rolled around, they weren't selling because nobody was buying a watch of that size anymore. We had all kind of matured beyond that. And I will say this, Nubeo has quite a number of really intriguing designs that I'm not 100% sure on just because of their large case diameters. They just remind me a little too much of a brand that I'm not particularly fond of, that a lot of us were very fond of way back 20 years ago. But sometimes innovation, quality, and sure, the overall aesthetic is going to win you over from making a practical decision to just pulling the trigger on something and giggling to yourself when you open it up because you're so excited about it. And this, I think, honestly, is going to be that watch for a lot of people. If you're like me and you've, for 2 decades, wanted to have a wandering hour, this is going to satisfy that. It's going to do it really, really well. If you want something that when you look down on your wrist, it makes you smile, because you're like, you know what? That's pretty friggin' cool that I've got this on my wrist. I have that awesome Carousel on my wrist. And look at the way it's glowing and the way the chapter ring is glowing with the Nubeo name and the scale. How cool is that? It tickles the armpit of your inner child. You know, it makes your inner child just smile and giggle, and it makes you happy. And really, that's all watches need to do besides tell time. Tell time, make me happy. That's it. It's all you got to do. I'm a pretty simple creature. And this, I believe, is going to do that for a lot of people. So, is it practical for everyday wear for a large segment of the population? Absolutely not. Can it be a watch that turns your head and makes you go, I typically wouldn't wear a watch that big, but I'll wear this one? Yeah, it might do that because it's got something special. And that something special besides the complication is when you pick it up and hold it and you feel the quality and you look at the finishing, you look at the dial work, and you look at the precision in which everything was crafted, you can't help but be impressed. I have one niggle with this watch, that it doesn't have a seconds indication. I really wish there was a seconds indication. Is it the worst thing in the world? No. I don't think I've ever not bought a watch because it didn't have a sweep hand or some seconds indication. But then again, I've also never been a fan of two-handed watches that don't have a seconds indication. So there's that. I guess I have a preference that I didn't really realize that I had. So yeah, I really wish there was a seconds indication on this. I think that would be a little bit more complete for me. And I also typically don't wear watches that don't have a calendar on them. But on this, I would not want a calendar. It would be an additional thing, wherever that aperture may be, that would be distracting with an already busy dial, and also would be obscured for a longer period of time than your standard calendar aperture would, because these blocks are larger than your typical minute hand. So, the way I look at it is, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it was worth it. And if you've got one of these, please sound off down below. I'd love to hear from you what you think with long-term ownership of the Skylab. With that, I'm out of here. Thank you guys for joining me as always, and I'll see you on the next video.